Good day, everyone! Today we will be presenting one of the most important concepts in chemistry, the Brønsted-Lowry theory.
This theory helps us understand how acids and bases behave, not just in water, but in all types of chemical reactions. Let's begin!
The Brønsted-Lowry theory was introduced in 1923 by two chemists, Johannes Nicholas Brønsted from Denmark and Thomas Martin Lowry from England.
They proposed that any compound capable of transferring a proton to another compound acts as an acid, while the compound that accepts the proton acts as a base.
A proton is a particle with a positive charge represented by hydrogen ion, since it's basically the nucleus of a hydrogen atom.
According to the Brønsted-Lowry theory, an acid is a proton donor, while a base is a proton acceptor.
In simpler terms, acid-base reactions are all about proton transfer. One substance gives up a proton and another one receives it.
This theory broadened the definition of acids and bases beyond just water-based reactions.
It also helps us explain acid-base behavior in non-aqueous solutions, and it's introduced the idea of conjugate pairs, which are very important in understanding equilibrium and buffer systems. An acid is any species that tends to lose a proton, while a base tends to gain a proton.
This means that acids and bases are defined by what they do, not by where they are found. The definition is independent of the solvent. Here, HCl or hydrochloric acid donates a proton, so it acts as the acid. NH3 or ammonia accepts the proton, so it acts as the base.
The term species is used instead of substance or molecule because acid and bases can also be ions, not just neutral molecules.
This is one of the best features of Brønsted-Lowry definition. It's more flexible and applies to more reactions.
In every acid-base reaction, there are two pairs. The conjugate acid, formed when a base gains a proton, the conjugate base, formed when an acid loses a proton. In this example, hydrogen chloride and chloride ion form one pair. Ammonium ion and ammonia form another. These pairs show how acid and bases can transform back and forth.
We will now watch this video to gain a deeper understanding of the
The
topic.
Arrhenius theory of acids and bases defines an acid as a substance that releases protons in solution, and a base as a substance that releases hydroxide ions in solution. We know that ammonia can act as a base and exhibits alkaline properties, but contains no hydroxide ions. How is this possible? In this lesson, we will learn about the Brønsted-Lowry theory of acids and bases, which fills in the gaps in the Arrhenius theory. You have learned that acids are substances with a pH lower than 7. We can test for acids using universal indicator solution, or paper, which turns red or orange, all depending on the strength of the acid. Blue litmus paper also turns red in the presence of an acid. An example of an acid that you are likely familiar with is hydrochloric acid. Hydrogen chloride dissolves in water to give hydrochloric acid. Hydrogen chloride will dissociate to give a proton and a chloride ion. The proton is not just released, but it is transferred to another substance. For our example, water accepts the proton to form a hydronium ion. A hydronium ion is also known as an oxonium ion. A Brønsted-Lowry acid is a substance that releases or donates protons in solution. In our case, hydrogen chloride. A Brønsted-Lowry base is a substance that accepts protons in solutions. In our case, water. Notice that the definition of a Brønsted-Lowry acid or base is not a function of pH. So an acid-base reaction, according to the Brønsted-Lowry theory, involves the transfer of a proton from one substance to another. In the introduction, we mentioned that ammonia acts as a base even though it does not release hydroxide ions, which is stipulated in the Arrhenius theory. When ammonia dissolves in water, it accepts a proton from water. Notice that this reaction also involves a proton transfer. Can you figure out which substance is acting as an acid in this example? Which is acting as a base? Please pause the lesson to think about this and resume when you are ready. In this example, water acts as a Brønsted-Lowry acid because it releases a proton. Ammonia acts as a Brønsted-Lowry base because it accepts a proton. So a base, according to the Brønsted-Lowry theory, does not need to have a pH greater than 7, or turn red litmus paper blue, or turn universal indicator solution or paper blue or purple. The only requirement is that it is able to accept protons. Have you noticed that water acted as a base in our first example, but as an acid in the second example? Substances that can act as either an acid or a base are amphoteric. In conclusion, according to the Brønsted-Lowry theory, an acid is a substance that dissociates to release or donate protons. A Brønsted-Lowry base is a substance that accepts protons. Therefore, an acid-base reaction, according to this theory, involves the transfer of a proton.
Typical acid-base reactions can be described as proton transfers. Let's look at this example to further enhance the understanding of the theory. As we can see, a proton moves from A1 to B2, producing B1 and A2.
This model can represent a wide range of reactions in solution, showing that many processes are actually acid-base reactions in disguise.
To conclude, the Brønsted-Lowry theory gives us a deeper understanding of how acids and bases work.
And remember, it focuses on proton transfer, allowing chemists to identify acids and bases in various systems and predict how they'll react.
Through this theory, we can better understand or even control chemical behavior in reactions.
Thank you for listening.